So I'm going to talk about scaling content creation. We've talked a lot about and seen a lot of examples of some kind of really high-end, premium, and what I assume is expensive content creation, which is great. But what I'm going to talk about is kind of like how we've been helping brands in that other area, the evergreen content, the 360 stuff that they need to put into social, digital channels to drive product sales. So you know Shutterstock as a big stock platform for music, videos, music, all of that kind of stuff. I'm going to talk about our custom offering, which is where we're creating bespoke content for brands. And so we were part of an acquisition last summer, where it used to be known as a company called Flashstock, and we were acquired by Shutterstock to fill out this area around custom content creation. Before I really get going, I just want to share a quick story just around kind of my feelings around this content production space, just to kind of frame up the rest of the talk. And so this goes back to the mid-2000s when I was a marketing manager at a wireless company or a telco up in Canada called Rogers. If you don't know it, it's like we're like the AT&T of Canada. So I was very new into the job, and I was tasked with going and presenting our CMO our quarterly, our Q4 campaign. So it was our big holiday Christmas push. And it was in the middle of the summer, so it just happened like my VP and the director that I was reporting to were both going away on vacation, but they're like, don't worry, Paul, this is a rubber stamp. He's seen the strategy, the creative concepts already, so just go in and knock it out of the park. I'm like, sure, no problem. So I go in to present. The guy's name is John, so I'm like, John, here's all the campaign, taking him through all the stuff, the digital, the above the line, below the line, all that kind of stuff. And it goes totally sideways. He's like questioning the strategy, all the concepts. I am so unprepared to be able to support all this stuff. And so, middle of the meeting, he stops and he's like, Paul, let me tell you a joke. I'm like, sure, John. And so he starts into this joke. He's like, bunch of people are going to get onto a plane. They're all lined up. So I'm not going to use his voice the whole time. But they're all lined up to get onto a plane. Bunch of pilots, they see the pilots coming up to board the plane, but they're clearly blind. Guys walking with a stick, the glasses, all that. They walk on, go down the gangway, get on the plane. Nobody really is causing a fuss or herd mentality. People just keep getting on and a little bit concerned in the back of their mind, but you know, they just keep going through the paces. So the plane pulls out, starts taxiing down, goes to the front of the runway, like the engines fire up, starts going down, bump, 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 faster, 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 bump, bump, bump. People are kind of like, maybe we should have taken off by now, bump, 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 faster and faster. Everybody in the plane screams, ah! Plane takes off. Back up in the cockpit, one pilot turns to the other, says, you know, one day they're not going to scream. So at this point, John laughs hysterically and leaves the room. I'm very confused. I'm like, I don't know if I'm a blind pilot. I don't know if I'm a screaming person in the back of the plane. But to me, like this joke's always stuck with me because it's kind of the way that I feel about this content marketing industry, and especially coming as a person who was a brand marketer as well, is that we talked about changing this process about how we create content for years and years, but we haven't really changed the process. There's some brands who are doing it, but by the most part, the industry itself really hasn't changed. We've been following the same kind of production process for the last 40 years. It's very linear, and it's not agile. It's not built towards how you can scale content across multiple channels. So with that, I'll get into some of the key challenges. We've talked about some, so I won't go through a lot of the motherhood stuff, but you know, we really built the company to address these key three factors around the shrinking attention span, the rise of video, and then also the rise of native formats. So we know that it's getting harder to keep people's attention. And just in terms of the formats that people are engaged with, we're becoming this culture of skimmers, so we have to start to create content that's very, very skimmable. The good news as marketers is that, you know, videos and social posts and news articles and research, people are still consuming that stuff, and in the video world, the challenge is always that a lot of those types of content, they're actually kind of hard to produce, especially if we're following that linear process and briefing people and back and forth and all of this kind of stuff. And you combine that with the fact that we have this like goldfish problem, that our attention spans are now something like 8 seconds, which is 3 seconds shorter than goldfish. It's very difficult to be able to hook and hold and engage consumers today. Video is growing, it's growing in leaps and bounds. I'm not going to go through a bunch of stats and stuff like that, but does people know what the top YouTube video is right now? Quickly, Wikipedia. Sorry? Gangnam Style? Close. Despacito. 4.66 billion views. I think we've hit peak Despacito, or at least peak Justin Bieber. And I apologize, I'm Canadian, that's our worst export that we've ever See You Again, Gangnam Style is number 3, holding strong from 2012. But the crazy thing is, like, so 60% of the world's population has watched Despacito. That's horrible. but like, so See You Again number 2 and Gangnam Style number 3, like Gangnam Style, when it was on its like meteoric rise, like Psy was on CNN and was all doing media tours and all of this kind of stuff. But now, like the expectation around viewing and consumption is just that, yeah, everything's going to be viewed like crazy. And when we know it's being driven by mobile, like people are just viewing things on their phone. But the interesting dynamic there is that the chosen place is always within apps. So you're going into Facebook. Yesterday, Keenan was talking about that they'll scroll the entire length of people will scroll the length of the Empire State Building in the infinite feed. And the amount of content that they're seeing and skimming is crazy. So it's like, you know, baby ad, baby ad, baby ad, baby ad. But this is like creating this huge demand for a rise in native formats, so having to be in feed or native formats within other sites. But as a brand marketer, you now have to try to create content that's going to be relevant. So stuff that's going to be for the format in Snapchat, for Instagram stories, for Facebook. And the problem is that like my marketing budget is not increasing, and I don't think anybody else's marketing budget is increasing to be able to accommodate all the different types of stuff. So that's what we set out to do a couple of years ago, to really revolutionize how creativity was being exchanged. How we approached it was that we built out a global network of content contributors, so we're 15,000 plus right now that we curate. They're in 100 plus countries. But what we wanted to do was apply technology to how brands and agencies interacted with those contributors. So we codified brand visual guidelines. So it's about 20 plus different variables that a brand will go through as they calibrate what their visual identity is. And then they can append those to different briefs and things like that then get relayed to the content contributors. So what we've done is we've taken that process, which has been like a brand talking to an account person talking to a creative person and writing a brief, and then them going in and briefing in a production company or photographers or whatever it may be. And along that way, like guidelines and visual identities get broken down, and in the end, people may not really have the same understanding of the brand as the brand manager may as well. And then what we do is we apply machine learning. So it's a constantly learning system. So as contributors are feeding back, and we also codify all the variables within the contributors as well in terms of what they're good at, what they perform well at, and all that kind of stuff. And then as brands select, we can select visuals, we can then refine their guidelines and then be able to kind of constantly have this cycle of improvement. And when we work with brands, we really see 3 kind of key areas in terms of how we can really kind of focus on this modern content creation. The first is visual identity, which I touched upon in terms of that brand guideline stuff. Rapid ideation is the second area. So this is like, how can we now just create lots of ideas that we can put into these different digital and social channels and figure out what's going to hunt well with the core audiences, and then unleashing creativity. So the one thing that this network provides us is the ability to not work within the constraints of budget and boxes and that kind of stuff as well. So in the visual identity area, there's 2 kind of key problems that really exist within this space. One is consistency, which is a well-known problem within the marketing world. Like, you know, the more consistent you are, the more consistent your brand is, the better your ad recall, the better your performance, the more efficient your spend is, all of that kind of stuff. But the second is around differentiation, which is a little bit harder to be able to address. So when we do visual identities and calibrations, what we look at doing is really trying to figure out how brands can look different. So here's an example of, you know, on the left there is Fiji water. And what they've done an awesome job of is like visual style, consistency, all that kind of stuff. But when you look at the industry as a whole and bump it up against the Dasani or Smart or any other water, Evian, they all really look the same. So you can swap it out. So if you're firing through those feeds and seeing this different type of content that's popping up, the brand recall side of things won't be there. One brand we work with is L'Oreal on their beauty products. So we work with them to take a lot of their beauty brands, to be able to calibrate them, to be able to create that kind of maximum differentiation based on their brand identities. And so the brands went through the process and they kind of worked everything to create that. And here's kind of just a quick example of how they've been able to create kind of that maximum separation in terms of their visual styles. So that when it comes to being able to brief in all of the different content contributors, and so all this work is work that different content contributors that will create, you get this like different feel across Dermablend, Vichy, Baxter. All of them have like unique styles and unique kind of ways that they're going to feature their product, or types of models that they're going to use, or even the type of situations. Like on the far end of Baxter, there's a lot of lifestyle, where the other ones are a little bit more product focused. And here, you get into Vichy, and it's like, there's just way more energy and color and vibrancy in its visuals. SkinCeuticals, obviously a bit more clinical in terms of the color palettes, the pastels, and just how angular everything has been propped. And then Dermablend, where it's a much more natural integration of the product. The colors and the color palettes are all much more kind of obviously in the browns and natural colors, and even just the roles of the models. Models will just have more imperfections in terms of wardrobe and what they look like as well. Another area is around rapid ideation and creation. So in this area, what we really look at doing is helping the brands figure out how can they create more ideas faster. So there's a quote by ex-CEO of Pepsi who talked about moving from like 8 months to 8 days and being able to like get this rapid ideation and change how we actually create from an agile, or from this kind of linear method to more of an agile kind of waterfall approach, and just get things faster. So we have this creative insights approach. It's fairly simple. Very similar to what Tastemade had showed as well, where we take top topics that are bubbling up in terms of what that target segment is talking about on Instagram. And then we take all of the content that they're actually posting as well to get like that visual style of how a specific segment might actually be communicating. Because the role of brands is either hold a mirror up to pop culture, or you create pop culture. Like 99% of brands are over in this hold a mirror up kind of area. So if you're trying to hold a mirror up to your target audience, you better know how they're actually communicating, what they actually talk about. So we did this with Pringles, getting so youthful people, millennials, engaged in the product. It's like every brief that you see from every company these days. And then so how we machine through and look at the different topics is we'll take like the top the topics that are the most like the farthest from the average in terms of Instagram usage, and so we take those ones that are the most unique ones, and then we combine them together with the ones that are getting volume. So we try to understand how unique they are with a given segment, but also have enough volume behind them that we can actually create some meaning, and then put them into overall topics so that we can, as we know that one individual tag doesn't mean anything, it's how all the tags kind of work together. And then from those tags, what we do is then suck in all those different images and visuals and try to understand what are the different kind of cues and things that appear within the visuals, so that as we're working to create content, what we should be focusing on. Then we have a creative strategist network that we're building out right now, that then we brief in to help create ideas. But these are some of the creative outputs that we did with Pringles. So at the top, we took like this notion of road tripping and events and experiences and all the types of things that the millennial audience values. And we wanted to integrate the product into them. So the top left was like, let's take the can on a road trip across the country and show it in different iconic places around the country. And on the right was same thing, same real creative idea, but let's integrate people and have more spontaneous fun and interactions with friends within the product. And then on the bottom, there was this whole area around DIY and maker culture, and this kind of notion of artistry, that there was a value with the audience. So we wanted to have fun with the actual product and just create different types of artwork with it. And then the bottom right here was using the can in kind of more innovative ways and everyday kind of household items and stuff like that. The last area I'll talk about is unleashing creativity. So this is that whole notion of, before we're always kind of restricted in terms of the content creation that we're doing based on time, budget, and complexity or quality sometimes. And so what we can do is that if a brand wants to tap in and be able to produce stuff, like 2 Japanese tourists riding on a zebra, that was an example I gave yesterday, but it resonated well. But it was like 2 Japanese tourists riding on a zebra. We can do that. We can execute something like that. So it's like if you think about how we can actually execute stuff using a global network, stuff that used to be fairly prohibitive because you had to put people on a plane and send them down to across the world and be able to source locations, do all that kind of stuff. We can do that within a matter of 3 weeks. So if we want to get shots of markets in Thailand, of people like cruising through and get like wonderful videos and stuff like that, of being able to do pieces showing off different areas, they're fairly easy to execute by tapping into that network. So one brand we work with is Nestle. They're the large brand with us. They're in 3 countries and 5 divisions and 70+ brands right now. So a small example of this is when we worked with Haagen-Dazs. The brand wanted to tap into the network to get a lot of really locally relevant content through the U.S. And so we just were able to tap into that network and get them to go out and find the locations, find the places that would be the cool, the neat spots that market would really understand and see and resonate with, and that kind of stuff as well. And so we really kind of look at now, like, we're only really limited by our creativity and by the types of briefs that we're getting. And every day it's great to get different briefs and see what people want to do so that we can create stuff and create a lot of stuff. So whether it's trying to create like Instagram stories of people walking around with drumsticks on beaches, or cute gifs of kids drinking water, or getting ethnically relevant images of people with dogs, or diversity of dogs and cats as well, that kind of stuff. And all of this is really kind of achievable. So we really kind of push our brands to think about how to be more creative and think about the different ways they can use the assets. As well as these assets come out, whether they're videos or images or whatever they may be, we can use them in so many different ways. So we can shoot like huge long format pieces of cruising around somewhere in Thailand, but then those can also be shifted into like Instagram stories and that type of stuff as well. And, I'm really bullish on like the role of AI and technology and how it's going to help fuel the creative area. Right now, we have kind of 3 levels of creative outputs, like these high level, very creative, very artist-driven type stuff. The middle layer of really kind of that hard-working advertising stuff. And this area that we're kind of focused on, which is this like fast, what you might call disposable media that the digital world is really kind of driving. And there's lots of things going on in this space that where creative is being created now by AI. It's like Google did something where they took a bunch of Street View images, and then they're starting to create beautiful images, beautiful photographs from those, purely driven by an AI. So if you think about that, they map the whole world and map the underwater and inside of buildings and stuff. They can take an autonomous vehicle, can go around and take pictures of all this type of stuff, then an AI can go and build like massive repositories of imagery. It's pretty crazy when you think about it. Luckily, I guess today for writers, the AI has been horrible at producing any written work. But I think there will be a day where if you take an image, if a brand wants to take an image with the product in it, load it in, an AI will be able to write ad copy against that, multiple variants of that ad copy, and then push those into a media channel where an AI will then will be able to adjust all of the different types of performance on it, and then tell the system the types of ads it should be producing. So like that kind of world is going to be coming faster than we think. And I think if anything, that will open up other opportunities. So if we can automate that layer, then we can eliminate a bunch of people who've been focused on there, and then they can focus on more stuff that might be more emotionally relevant and stuff like that. But if you want to look at like what AIs are doing right now in this kind of content space, like Sunspring, I don't know if anybody has seen that short. It was an AI written short like 1 or 2 years ago. It was so the machine was trained on a bunch of sci-fi movies, and then it produced a 15-minute short, and it ended up being horrible. It was a total parody of a sci-fi movie, and then they made it into this 15-minute short, And it starred the guy that had the main actor from Silicon Valley, and it's great. So it's called Sunspring, just check it out. And recently an AI wrote the next season of Game of Thrones. And it's interesting because it came out with a bunch of interesting plot lines that when you look at it, it doesn't make any sense, but you can actually reverse engineer it to kind of make sense too. But it's in an interesting space today. I'm out of time. We don't just talk the talk, we do this stuff too. So I run marketing for the organization as well. So the one thing I'd like to leave you with is that I'm not only a spokesperson, but I'm also a member. We do this stuff, so we do run all of our demand gen ads. We use our network to produce all of our content, and so we're making videos and cinemagraphs and all of this kind of stuff too, and optimizing and changing the stuff. And it's actually a great resource, so we get to be creative with it as well. Last thing, I'll just focus on this last point, but things don't need to be perfect, so just keep trying and experimenting. So I think we need to just get away from how we've always thought of having to make sure things have been perfect from a brand standpoint, and really just think now about how we can create like minimum viable creative product, get it into market, see what works, and then if it starts to work, we can bubble that up into bigger, better ideas and that kind of stuff too. That's it for me. I will be around the rest of the day if you want to chat about anything, and there's a couple other folks, but Ryan's here too from Shutterstock if you want to chat too. Thanks a lot.